Welcome to Sunlit Freedom, the only podcast in the world where every episode is out in the sun. On today's episode, I'm going to do something which I've never done either in writing or on video. I'm going to try and share the type of conversations I often have when I'm on hikes with people. This conversation is going to be about fatigue and COVID. It's a 10-year anniversary since the entire world went through the crisis. The Basically, it's a 5-year anniversary from March 2020. So I do think I'm going to use this opportunity to have a conversation titled Why You Are Fatigued After COVID, and more specifically, how do we solve it? Because I don't care about how we got here. I actually don't. I care more about how we're going to get ourselves out of this mess. So, for starters, if you watch my other videos, you know I've described the different types of intelligence. Well, I'm gonna be wrong about a lot of things. I have a tendency of listening to a lot of ideas, reading a lot of papers and stuff like that, and absolutely forgetting the facts. My brain just doesn't remember details. I have a funny story of when I was in El Salvador and I was talking to an American about the Federalist Papers. We were talking about how pseudonymous people were responsible for the entire argument of creating the United States and the first democracy in the world. And in the middle, I told him, "What's the number of states? It's called the lower 26." And then he looked at me and was like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And then I remember I didn't know how many American states there are. I could quote him sentences from James Madison, but I forgot that there were 48 states in the US. That's just how my brain works. So if there are facts wrong here, assume that it's going to exist. Assume that even the conclusions might be wrong, but they'll still be directionally more correct. So let's start with that being the basis. And I like to joke that this is not a medical advice because, unlike medical advice, this will actually make you feel better. So, let's go. So, one of the biggest things that describes the crisis which we are all going through is T cell depletion. What is T cells? A simplified, so for this discussion, your body has two types of immune cells which are relevant called T8 and T4. Now, I think the balance is supposed to matter and the amount is supposed to matter. But I'm going to use the broad term T cell depletion to also include T cell imbalance. But for this conversation, we can think of it as HP points in a video game. Basically, how much immune system strength you have in a video game. One of the things where COVID is very different to almost every other virus we've had before, where it is specifically very different to the flu, is T cell depletion. The only similar virus is AIDS, which is why from the start of COVID, there was a conversation about how COVID is similar to AIDS. Now, AIDS tends to deplete your immune system gradually, progressively, all the time. The Once you have it, just slowly depletes. The difference with COVID is there are four variables around the whole during this time that we know about when it comes to depletion of T cells. We know that the more sick you get, the more your T cells are depleted. We know that a lot of people got their T cells depleted during 2021. The consensus on certain parts of the internet is that it was the vaccine. I'll bet I don't care that much about that because for the next part is since 2022, we know that people who got the normal, who just got sick without it being intense, still had their T cells being depleted. So the since so between 2020 and 2021, there's always these dynamics where everyone can debate and fight about all of that. I don't think that helps the few conversation going forward. So I'm just going to have the post 2022 conversation. And post 2022, the dynamic is the virus depletes your T cells, even if you don't get sick. So since 2022, what we are all going through is a version of the we all have been infected multiple times across the board, and every time we get infected, it's like our savings in the bank account is just getting drained. We're not getting that sick, but our savings are getting drained. So this is where um so the emotion, the feeling in the air is basically your saving account getting drained. And that doesn't feel good. That feels horrible when it's happening. It doesn't matter if happening if it's your saving account or your immune system. And that's why many people have this feeling of I didn't get very sick, but over span of 6 months, I feel completely drained. And so that's the one dynamic to all of this. Now, the reason I bring this up and the reason you don't want to let this conversation go is because it's been 5 years, right? So I'll use a country like Germany for this illustration. Over the past 5 years, which year did most Germans die? That's a like it's not a question of if they died from this, if they died for that. I don't give a shit. My question is which year did most Germans die in the past 5 years? The answer 2022. Wait, that's after everyone stopped caring about health because everyone just cared about health for those 2 years, and then once the political battles were done, people stopped caring about health. So the year 2022 was the year most Germans died. What's the second year where most Germans died? Oh yeah, 2023. What's the third most year? 2024. And 2025 might be maybe even worse than one of those years. So the past 3 years when everybody chose to leave this battle because it's not in the news, it's not in the headlines, those are the years in the past 5 years that the most Germans died. This is true for almost every country. Doesn't matter if you're talking about Taiwan, doesn't matter if you're talking about India. Mortality across the board has increased. There's only one explanation. We all have weak immune systems. You can see this all around you. Which ones of your friends actually has more energy today compared to 2019? How many people are having issues recovering from normal injuries that shouldn't be that hard? How are the rates of cancers gone up? All of these are symptoms of a society that's just been drained. We can blame our phones and stuff like that, but when we know for the like it's factual that people have fewer T cells now, I think we should start looking at that as the biggest issue. Now, let's not have a fatalistic view. One of my biggest points with all of these things is never ever have a fatalistic view. So it doesn't matter. Was it the vaccine? Was it the virus? Somebody else will have those conversations, will get data out from the organizations 5 years from now, the same way we got data out about weapons of mass destructions not existing. But we don't know the answers now, so let's not even care about it for now. Um, but you don't want to have a fatalistic view. So this example of your immune system gets drained, saving account gets drained every time you get sick. Um, it's more you want to have this perspective to have a positive solution, not a fatalistic, because we know many people adopted this fatalistic perspective at the start of this 5 years. They at the start of it they saw a paper or two that told them that this virus is going to completely drain them. They accepted that as a perspective, and now they probably are too afraid to leave their room because they believe that they have chronic illnesses or something. Some of them might, but most of them don't. So you always want to never ever have the fatalistic view. So let's say your saving accounts are drained. There's a positive solution out of that. So I'll give my experience with this. Over the past 6 months, I think I got COVID 2 times, and both of them knocked me out a little bit. And but let's say it's a month. So this is where AIDS and COVID is very different. You only have like COVID only drains your saving account when you're actually sick. So let's say I got it in June and December. If I got it in June, For a month, my saving account was being drained, and then in December, my saving account is being drained. But in the middle, yeah, 5 months. What did I do in those 5 months? My actions can change, can make my immune system stronger. Now, I you can broaden that perspective even further, which is I believe if you were proactive over the past 5 years, you have more energy now than 5 years ago. Everyone who is intentional, who cared about their health, who genuinely acted as if they cared about their health over the past 5 years, and not some political bullshit I'm going to post about my health and caring about other people on Facebook, but actually caring about your health, you would have more energy today than 5 years ago because you did the right actions. So I never learned about T cells 5 years ago. I never even learned about it 2 years ago because I just didn't want to ever pick up a fatalistic perspective. I just assumed, yes, this might drain me a little bit, but I'm just going to push against it and do the right actions to get stronger. So, always low stress, even when something as dramatic as a virus that depletes your T cells more than almost anything we've ever seen before comes along, you don't want to be stressed. You want to keep it at a distance because the entire perspective I think I had when I didn't get the vaccine during COVID was I'm a young guy. I am not afraid, and I have zero tolerance for every virtue signaling 40 to 60-year-old who hides behind immunocompromised people when they are just afraid of them about themselves and they don't mind sacrificing the young. That wasn't the perspective I tolerated. Nobody cared about it. They were just afraid for their own self because they didn't believe that they were strong enough to fight. So it's a fear reaction. Those people are welcome in the conversation when they accept that they were just afraid, and we all can move on. But in that world, always assume that, oh, yes, I'm strong enough. I'm going to fight this. And on the other side of it, I'm going to do all the proactive things. So over the 5 years, I'll come up stronger. So a version of that was I added one new good habit a year. So I'd taken a break from the gym for about the 5 years before 2020. And in 2021, I decided, all right, this thing has drained me. Let's start going to the gym again. Then in 2022, I still felt lethargic. So I was like, let's buy a fitness tracker and let's walk 10,000 steps every day. Let's use the will that exists within each of us, human will, and just start walking 10,000 steps every year, every day. Then next year, I was like, ooh, rocking also will add a good amount. Let's put 10 kilos in my backpack and start climbing the mountain. Ooh, the next year, I was like, sun, why am I avoiding the sun so much? Every Indian is lacking vitamin D. Let's get an app, optimize vitamin D. Each of these layered on top of each other. So over the past 5 years, when I didn't know the words with T cells, I probably ended up creating more T cells than at the start of the pandemic because I just optimized for low stress. I'll come out on the other side of this and I'll do the obvious things and I'll pay attention. I'll pay attention to what's happening so I understand the actual dynamics of what's going on. So, what are the therapies you can use to get more T cells? For the most part, as I've always said, it's always the simple, obvious shit. It's not complicated. Don't There are some complications involved in this conversation, but let's start with the simple things: sleep, exercise, stress, food, nutrition. It's not complicated. If the only people that say things are complicated are the ones that fail to do the simple things. Let's just start doing the simple things, the obvious things. There's one issue though. Okay, solutions don't work. A lot of people's perspective on health is the equivalent of floating. Let me just float in the water. Floating's not a bad idea. It's just going with the flow. And if the flow's in the right direction, that's fine. Floating works in a swimming pool. I think the 70s was a swimming pool. You could just float, but this is not the 70s. And also, you could almost say the 2020s, 2010s was a swimming pool for health. You could just float. But then, what happens if there's a large current? What happens if there's a large current pulling you out to sea? What happens if there's a large current if there's a large expense draining your bank account? Will you ever be able to get back to shore if you just float? No. So, okay solutions. Any solution that worked for you in 2019, that was good enough, that, oh, I'm not trying to be very fit. I just want to be like not get too unhealthy. Those are okay solutions. Those are not okay. I'm gonna try and learn how to gain the most amount of muscle for the like 45 minutes in the gym and be hyper effective. That's a good solution. An okay solution is ha ha ha, look at those stupid bodybuilders, they're on steroids, they are all so stupid. That's an okay solution of a world that doesn't exist anymore, and you are smarter than that. You are smarter than that than accepting a world of okay solutions. So when the world pulls you, when your saving account is being drained, when the physical reality tax is now higher because we now have pathogens that drains our immune system every time we get infected, you got to adopt good solutions. There's no mincing around words here. In a world where 50% of Germans are overweight, along with Vietnamese kids getting obese, you just realize like there is no time to waste in acting as if okay solutions are fine. You just find worldviews. For example, let me find who are the best people in the world for hypertrophy. Learn from them. Let me find who are the best people in the world for VO2 max. Learn from them. Let me go to a yoga class. Yes. In all of this, there's no ha 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 jokes about how yoga folks aren't don't have muscle, or how gym bros don't know about functional strength. Those are midwit perspectives that everyone is smarter than, and you're kind of making the world a worse place if you share those ideas. So that's a basic foundation of how I look at this world. Now there's certain things that matter a lot here, which is and I'll use an analogy which I've talked about before to explain this. So one of the things we've in 2014, so let's say the early 2010s, there was a meta study done on vitamin D across India. So across India, they did a meta study that showed that 90% of people in India are below 30 nanogram per milliliter. That's what I would call barely holding on. Basically, if you're below 30, it's almost like you're clinically ill, I would say. Now, 50 nanogram is good, it's good, and 70 is like God mode. So Indians in India, with the high amount of UV India gets with all of that, have below 30, and this was done in universities all over India in 2010s, before social media existed. So we could almost think of Indians in India, when it comes to health and all of this, barely holding onto the cliff. When they move anywhere away from the equator, if they still keep their behavior habits, they fall off a cliff immediately, and then they come up with theories of why the cold depressing winters, they don't feel happy, they blame stuff like community and all of that, when 90% of the fatigue is just vitamin D, because they were barely holding on in India. You take them away from the equator, they keep their same habits, gone off the cliff. That's everyone in the world now when it comes to immune systems. Everyone in the world was barely holding on. Germany was 50% overweight before COVID. Kids in Vietnam were getting obese before COVID. All of these things were happening 5 years ago. You add in a virus that drains people's immune systems. What are you going to get? The world of today. The world of today, where everyone thinks it's acceptable for everyone to feel worse every year. I don't think that's acceptable, and I want to help everyone out of that. And we're going to get out of it by one, actually realizing what's happening. We are all, yes, I don't want to have is it the vaccine, is it the virus? I didn't get the vaccine, and you're free to judge me if you're still stuck in that world where that matters. But I still don't want to have the conversation, because I think we have a bigger conversation now, is we all have weak immune systems. Let's do our best to come out strong of it. And I hope this analogy, that what we are going to right now, is every time you're getting sick, your saving account is getting drained. I'm pretty sure you felt it. You felt it like just something, like something's wrong and it's just being drained out of you. What you do in between those times, because right now it's prevalent, it's everywhere. There's nothing we can do to reverse this trend. The one thing we can do is marginally each one of us makes our immune system stronger and the immune systems of everyone we care about stronger. All right? May you have more T cells. Jeremy out.